Hi there, this is Steve from Horizontal Motorsports. I'm going to be showing you how we rebuild your turbocharger here at Horizontal. We actually do this all in-house now. We found that we get better quality control that way, and since we've changed our program, we have had zero failures whatsoever. So today you're going to see the rebuild of a very common problem that's out there in the Subaru industry on these turbos. And I'm going to kind of walk you through step by step on how it all goes down. So let me switch you around here. As you can see here, this is a VF40, I believe. Let's see if I can scratch this off here for you. Okay, so this is a VF40 turbocharger. You can distinguish these VF turbos on this ID tag right here. They will tell you pretty much what they are. This one's really hard to see, but it does say VF40. This turbo is very common on the Legacy GT and Outback XTs. Real common issue here is the banjo filters, and these are very prone to clogging up from lack of oil change maintenance. And unfortunately, the turbo will suffer because there's really no other way for the turbo to get its lubrication after that filter clogs. This is the feed line right here that comes off the engine. And typically what you see, this is actually an engine over here, I'll show you. This is the other end of that feed line where it connects. Back here, this bolt right here is called a banjo fitting filter. This one doesn't have a filter in it. We remove all those filters on all the motors we build. Just in case you decide not to change your oil on time, your turbo will still get the oil it needs and you will not have the clogging issue. Typically you'll see there'll be a little bump on top like this one here, and there'll be a filter in there. These are all removed. This is an engine that we're doing, so yeah, you can see here this turbo's had a pretty rough life. You can see how much shaft play this thing really has. It's pretty well shot. You can even see the blades have been kind of chewed up and they don't look very good. So, the backside here on this turbo, you can see major failure. This is lack of oil to the center cartridge, and it's just a matter of time before the bearing seizes and breaks. So, we are going to rebuild this turbo to brand new or better than new condition. Alright, so first things first, we need to tear this turbo down. So now we're going to tear this turbo down. Okay, so we've got the entire turbocharger disassembled now. As you can see, this turbo definitely had some issues. This is the turbine wheel. It is actually sheared, and if you look, you can actually see the heat from lack of oil lubrication, and you see the fins are just completely destroyed. This is supposed to be one piece with this unit here. But as you can see there, I mean, this thing was burning oil for quite a long time, and it is no longer attached to the shaft anymore. So it's garbage. There's quite a few little pieces here on these turbos. You got to be very careful when you disassemble a turbo that every single piece goes back where it was supposed to. Where it belongs. But the main core here, basically when we rebuild these turbos, most people are like, oh, they're just putting in a new wheel and some cheap bearings and calling it good and they're making all this money. Well, no, that is not the way we do it here at Horizontal. This entire center section here, this is called a CHRA. And this houses all the guts of the turbo. This is where the magic happens. It has the compressor wheel. There's this right here is a fire ring right here for the back of the turbo. And you have your turbine wheel, you've got your bearings inside and all your delicate pieces, right? Well, it's extremely difficult to find parts from our experience over the years to properly rebuild the internals of this unit. Typically, most people will go to eBay and they will buy eBay bearings and rings and thrust washers and whatnot, and they get knockoff wheels that are not made of the same materials, and you know, it's just setting yourself up for failure. I mean, these units, when rebuilt properly, will be just as good as the day they rolled off the showroom floor from the factory. However, if you cut corners and you don't rebuild these properly with good quality parts, and you know, also balancing is huge. When these wheels are spinning here in this turbo, they can exceed 150,000 revolutions per minute. So you can imagine that even the slightest imbalance at that RPM will just destroy the turbo in a matter of seconds. So balancing is another issue. In order to do these properly, if you're going to rebuild the internals of this, you have to have a machine that can dynamically balance this entire rotating assembly. Otherwise, the rebuild you're doing will not last and you will have problems. So I don't have, you know, the $100,000 balancing machine or any of those fancy tools to engineer a turbocharger properly. So instead, I have done research over the years and have done lots of trial and error on my own. And what I found is a company that supplies the CHRA, this complete center section, balanced with quality parts that are equivalent or better than the factory used in these turbos, and I've verified that. And we use that for the basis of our turbo rebuilds. This minimizes our risk, and it also minimizes problems that can arise. And they've been doing it for a very long time, and they've got the process down. So I'll show you here in a second the new parts we're going to put in. The one other critical thing is most people think you can just take these housings, slam them on a new center section, and you're good to go. No, that is not the case. So as you can tell here, this thing is chewed up. So it had to have taken material or hit something at one point. So if we go over here where it was living, we need to look. We're going to go inside of this housing here, and we're going to actually measure the internal diameter of this bore, and we're going to make sure that it's still within spec, because if it's not, then this housing is garbage and we will not reuse it. So we are also going to do the same thing with the compressor cover. We're going to measure this, make sure it's good, and those are, you know, those two checks alone right there are the difference between doing this right and, once again, having a turbo that is going to fail. Okay, now we've got all the turbocharger pieces that need to be cleaned in our industrial parts washer here. So we're going to go ahead and clean all these parts up. This is critical because when you're rebuilding a turbo, I can't stress enough, it's just like building an engine. Everything has to be very clean. Okay, we're back. Now we have the new parts here. I'm going to take them out of the bag, show you guys what we're dealing with here. Okay, now this is a brand new CHRA, like I was talking to you about earlier. Now, as you can see, very shiny, brand new, very high quality finish on all the parts. This is, you know, nothing's made out of the Chinese pot metal that you see online. The wheel is made of very durable material, equivalent to the factory. You can see this turbine wheel looks a little bit better than our other one. You can see that there's no wear on this one. So basically, all of our turbos are based on brand new center sections. So everything in this center section, this piece, has been precision balanced to over 150,000 RPM, or up to 150,000 RPM. And it's ready to go. They've already done all the engineering and critical parts inside. So basically, this minimizes any issues that we will see when rebuilding these turbochargers. So when you get a turbo from us, you know, people will say, oh, it's not brand new, you know, it's not brand new. Well, The CHRA, which is what really matters as long as the housings are not cracked, is brand new. So you essentially do have a brand new turbocharger. So just want to clear that up real quick. All of our turbo rebuilds here have a 1-year warranty, as long as it's installed properly and the proper procedures are followed. We have a little serial tag here. So all of our turbos are going to have a serial number on them, you know, and a serial tag, so that we can identify every turbo that we do here. All right, so now we can start assembling. Okay, I got everything out of the parts washer here. As you can see, nice and clean. We've also measured this bore here, internal diameter, and it is actually in spec, so we're good to go on that one. So we just gave it a light polish. We do a light polish on that just to take out any imperfections and just give it a little bit better airflow. We're not going crazy here, guys. This is not by any means a port and polished housing. That would be a lot more extensive. This is basically just taking the little tiny top layer off to give a nice clean surface and help the compressor wheel do its job. So that one's good to go. And we got our exhaust housing here all cleaned up. It still looks rusty, and it's going to. I mean, with this material, you know, this material literally will rust overnight if it gets wet. So, you know, don't freak out when you see our turbos with rusty housing like this on the back. This housing is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It will run for a very, very, very long time. And it's just the nature of the beast when you're working with cast iron. So we do have ceramic coating options available. Some people might ask why I don't sandblast this housing to give it a cleaner finish. We have thought about that. However, sandblasting can also do some negative effects to the metal, and it's just a lot harder to clean up and make sure there's no sand in there when the turbo's rebuilt and done. And personally, I would much rather have a housing that is free of sand and just maybe look a little aged, rather than a housing that looks brand new that could have sand particles in there that could damage the new parts we're putting in. So until I find a process that's efficient at cleaning this housing a little better without sacrificing any debris in there, this is how our turbos are going to look. So all those parts are out of the washer. Something I just want to kind of show here. These fittings here have been sanded down. They are notorious for leaking because over time you get buildup and the metal starts to break down. So they will be getting brand new crush washers as well. But both sides of these fittings have gone through and been surfaced. It's hard to tell with the camera, but they have been. Also, the ends of the hose connections have been cleaned. That's important because a lot of rust and debris can build up on those connections, and your hoses will leak no matter what you do. So we already took care of that for you as well. This is the turbo oil feed line. This is extremely important that this gets cleaned out thoroughly with a solvent. This one has already been cleaned out. I got it all good to go. This is the wastegate. Something to note about the wastegate here. We do not put this in the parts washer for a reason. There is a rubber diaphragm inside, and it can get contaminated or damaged by the parts washer. So we just give this one a little brake clean and call it good on that. Another little important fact here is this T. This T is specific to this wastegate and this turbocharger. So there is a small restrictor pill in this hose. It's usually right about here, and you can feel it if you squeeze. It's a little bump. Let's see here if I can zoom in. You can't see it, but trust me, it's there. I can feel it. Well, that basically it's a metered orifice that is a special size that Subaru has actually put in there. The reason why they do this is because the sensitivity of this actuator and when it starts to open is going to be different from another style turbo actuator. So they put the right size pill in here to compensate for that. So if you do not have this factory boost line with the pill inside, and you've got a turbo, like some guys that rebuild these turbos will just not even include this line. This turbo will never boost properly or be able to be tuned unless you do a aftermarket boost controller. So this is one of the things we stress, that our turbos come with the factory boost pills. You cannot buy them separately, as far as I know, without buying the entire turbo from Subaru. So another advantage of our rebuild program here. All right, well, we got our new parts. Everything's cleaned up, measured, and ready to go. So let's start assembling it. All right, so now we got the turbo assembled, as you can see. Make sure that everything spins free. Oh yeah. No noises, that's what you want to see. You also want to make sure that the air gap right here between the blades and the housing is perfect, because if it's not, you're not going to be able to build boost properly. I just want to take a quick second to point out something here that's very common. These drain tubes that go on the bottom of the turbo, these are notorious for being warped. Almost every single turbo that I've rebuilt, these have been warped. And what will happen is it'll start leaking oil. Some people try to silicone it. It's just not the way to go. So we have actually machined this flange flat again, and that's just standard in all our rebuilds. All right, assembling the turbo here. Just a quick nice little shot of the inside here. Everything turns nice and smooth, like it should be. There's no interference, blades are not touching the housing, and we've checked the air gap to make sure that it's correct, so this turbo will boost properly. We're using all the factory hardware here. It's just kind of one of the things I like to do. It's not as pretty as a brand new bolt, but I'm a factory guy. I like factory. So everything here looks good. This has also been checked for straightness, and make sure that this flange is flat, because that's critical. Also, these holes, the threads have been checked, and I usually run a tap through them to make sure that they're perfect, so the intercooler can bolt on properly. So as you can see, the nice new center section in there. Everything's coming along. So turbo's going back together right now. Now we're just about ready to put the wastegate on and connect the flapper. Also, I just wanted to note that we check this flapper and we make sure we machine both sides, make sure that it is a perfect seal. On some of our turbos, this model is not really too crucial, but we actually will port the internal wastegate housing larger. As you can see, the hole is quite small compared to the flapper, so there's room for that hole to go bigger. So we will actually go in and we will go through the turbocharger, and we will port the housing bigger on the VF 39, 43, and 48s. The reason why we do that is because if anybody's had an STI with a downpipe on it, at one point or another, without an external wastegate, you've experienced boost creep. So as part of our standard service, we don't charge any extra, it's included. We will go ahead and port that wastegate out so that you will not have the boost creep issues associated with these turbos. This particular turbo here is not very common at all to have that problem, so we don't need to address that on this particular model. However, on the STI turbos, it is very crucial that that gets ported. I just feel that it kind of sets us above the rest as far as when we're doing these turbos. Basically, I just saved most customers about $800 by doing that modification to the STI turbos. So we go ahead and include that in the service. External wastegate still is a good idea. However, it's not required anymore with any of our HMS rebuilt STI turbos. So All right, well, there you have it. Turbo's completely assembled, back together, rebuilt, all new internals, and it's ready to go. So this is the finished product here. Oil lines on, all new gaskets, wastegate actuators back on here. Oil line has been flushed and cleaned out. Still have the factory boost tee here with the pill intact. And this thing's ready to go for many, many, many more miles. This turbo here, we sell this. If you were to buy this from us, it's $8.99 out the door, because we supplied obviously the entire unit. If you bring us your turbo and want to rebuild it, it is $7.99, so it's $100 off. We give a 1-year warranty on these turbos, and as long as they're installed properly and all the proper procedures are followed. A brand new Subaru turbo runs $1,100 from Subaru, and with the modifications that we do to the wastegate on some of these turbos, we feel that our turbos are superior to the factory unit. Like I said, we have a 0 failure rate so far with these turbos. With all the turbos we have rebuilt ourselves here at HMS in-house. Most people are probably watching this video right now saying, oh man, I could do that myself, save a lot of money, do it myself at home in a weekend. Well, it is pretty easy to do. I build everything from transmissions to motors to turbos, so to me this is an easy thing to do. However, I will warn you that there are a couple of critical measurements and small things that I have done that is not shown in this video that will determine the difference between this working and not working. Also, the parts supplier for these parts are extremely hard to find. It's hard to find good quality wheels that have the proper aerodynamics that Subaru designed in the first place. We have actually verified these turbos on the dyno here, and they are exactly the same almost in every way, and actually have shown to spool a little bit quicker than the factory unit, and eliminate boost creep on some of the other models with the mods we do. So I'm very confident with our program here at Horizontal, and it's really a great value at the end of the day. I'm sure there's other options out there for cheaper, but just remember, you get what you pay for in this business with just about everything. So the fact that we put a 1-year warranty on these turbos, that to me is worth every penny. I'm sure you could find somebody else cheaper to rebuild these for you, but to find the warranty and the guarantee is really hard to do. And plus, nobody really wants to do a turbo again and risk engine damage when the bearing decides to discharge all the metal down this tube into the pan. So any other questions, you can email me at steve@horizontalmotorsports.com. You can give us a call here at the shop. We usually have the parts in stock, or they're within a couple days out if we need. We have a really good relationship with the company that supplies all the CHRAs and parts for these turbos, and they're very well known in the industry and very big company. So thanks for watching.